I think it's become more affordable for people to buy property abroad now because of the global recession. A lot of countries, as well as the UK, have been hit quite badly by it, particularly places like Spain and Florida, for example, where you can now buy properties for around 50% less than you would have done, say, 5 or 6 years ago. I think the other thing that people need to be aware of now as well is that there are so many fantastic bargains out there to be had, because vendors and banks are all trying to get rid of their houses quickly. You know, lots of people have got themselves into financial difficulties and they just want to sell their property. So if you're clever, you can pick up some fantastic bargains. I think the top 5 countries that are good to invest in at the moment are the favourites: Spain, France, Portugal. Those are the 3 that we Brits feel comfortable with. And I know that Spain has had quite a bad rap in the past few years about developers going bust and lots of developments not being finished. But as long as you're careful and as long as you do your homework out there, you can pick up some fantastic bargains. So Spain, France and Portugal. Italy is another one. It's another favourite, and I think we're getting a little bit more adventurous. We're branching out. We're leaving the sort of safety of Spain and France and Portugal. I have a house in Italy, and I go out there probably 5 or 6 times a year, and I just love it. The other one is Florida, and I think that the USA in general has suffered a lot more in this recession than we have, and Florida in particular. The bargains that you can pick up there are quite unbelievable at the moment. So Florida would be another good one. I think in terms of avoiding somewhere to buy, there isn't a specific country, but I think you have to be very clear in your mind about why you're buying this property abroad. If you're buying a property abroad as a holiday home that you are going to use, that you are going to have fun in and maybe rent out when you're not using it, that's one thing. But if you're buying a property abroad to make a financial gain, i.e. an investment, that's when you've got to start thinking very carefully about what you're doing. You need to know what you're doing for a start. None of us have a crystal ball. We can't predict which countries are going to grow rapidly and which countries aren't. I think to be on the safe side, you have to approach anything like that with caution. And another thing that I would say is, if something sounds like it's too good to be true, it probably is. If someone is telling you that you will treble your money overnight, just be wary. I think that slowly but surely it's going to start getting better. I think at the beginning of the noughties, when there was the sort of gold rush fever and everybody was going out and buying something, whether it was in Spain or Bulgaria or France or America, we've all been a little bit badly burnt and we all sort of went and sort of panicked a little bit. But I think that slowly but surely the confidence is returning. I think what you're finding nowadays as well is people that are buying are much more informed, they're much more choosy, and they're not just handing over big wads of cash for properties they've never seen before. And I think that's a good thing. I think the fact that we have all been a little bit badly burnt has made us a lot more cautious, and I think that's good. I think that you will see the toes are going to slowly start being dipped back in the water again. We love our properties and we love going abroad, so I think as a nation it's something that we will always be interested in, and I do think that it will slowly but surely start to creep back up again. I think fractional ownership can be a really good idea. Basically what a fractional ownership means is that you own a share of the freehold of a property along with quite a few other people. So that's the bit that you've got to be careful of. You have to make sure that you buy it through a company that's got a good name and that you check them out thoroughly and that you've got your lawyer to check them out thoroughly. I think the one thing you have to be careful of, however, is what happens if you decide that you want to sell your share of that property. You have to be very careful. If you have a fractional ownership and you've got 12 people all in that fractional ownership, that's when you've got to be a little bit careful. But I think for people who just want to go out to a property maybe 2 or 3 times a year, can be fantastic, but do your homework. I think in terms of safe investment, property is one of those areas that you have to be incredibly careful with. You know, there are no guarantees with buying a property anywhere in the world, in this country, in Spain, in Florida, wherever you look. However, I think if you are thinking of buying a property abroad, one of the things you need to be aware of is try and think about buying a property somewhere that's got a good resale value. So if you did decide that you wanted to sell it in 2 or 3 years' time, it's popular with other people want to live there or buy there. So make sure that you buy in an area that other people would want to buy as well. It's the whole supply and demand thing as well. If the supply is outstripping the demand, don't go there. i.e., if you've got thousands of apartments and people aren't buying them, then you're never going to sell that on. But if the demand is outstripping the supply, i.e. more people are going there than they can build the houses, that's a relatively safe bet. I think places like Florida, where you've got all the big theme parks, where you can almost get a guaranteed rental return on a property, that's a good idea. But in terms of safe places to invest, you've just got to be careful, and you also have to be aware that if you did invest 100 grand, in 5 years' time it might only be worth 50 grand, or it might be worth 350 grand. That's the gamble that you get when you play with property. My top 5 tips for buying abroad, the number one, the one that should have the fireworks and everything sort of and a trumpet to announce it, is always get an independent lawyer. So never use a lawyer that the developer recommends, never use the lawyer that the estate agent recommends. Find one individually. That's the top tip, and make sure that they're a good firm. Don't overstretch yourself. Don't buy a property thinking that you're going to be able to rent it out for 20 weeks of the year and that will cover all your costs, because if you can't rent it out for 20 weeks, what are you going to do? Don't sign anything unless your lawyer has seen it. So don't even sign an inspection form or a reservation form. Don't sign any piece of paper until your lawyer has seen it. If you're buying through a developer or through an estate agent, check their records. Make sure that they're okay. Make sure that they're a member of a proper organisation. I think another thing to think about is make sure that you actually visit the property. And I know that sounds stupid, but particularly nowadays with the World Wide Web, so many people look at properties on the internet. And I've heard of people that buy properties on the internet without even going to the country and looking at the actual property. So do be really careful with that. And finally, don't get carried away. I often think that when people buy holiday homes abroad, it's a bit like a holiday romance. You go out and it's all lovely and sunny and hot and warm, and you're out there for 2 weeks and it's beautiful and everybody speaks English and it's all fabulous, and you see this great apartment on the beach and you think, oh, wouldn't it be great, we could come here forever. Go home, have a think about it. Don't get carried away and start putting money down straight away. You've got to be really careful. You're not buying a pair of shoes here or even a new car. You're buying a huge investment. You're putting a lot of money into a property. So I think you have to be very careful about that. Take somebody else out with you to have a look at it. Make sure that you've not gone completely mad, because the last thing you want to do is buy this beautiful house and then turn up and think, actually, I've made an awful mistake. So don't get carried away. I think people would be really surprised at what they can buy abroad compared to the average house price in the UK, which I think is £164,000. In Florida, for example, you can get a 3-bedroom detached villa with a swimming pool for £100,000. And places like Spain, I mean, they've seen their properties drop by 50%, so you can pick up apartments there now for sort of 70, 80,000. So it is definitely worth carrying out your research. The other tip that I would give people is buy where you actually want to visit, which I know sounds really stupid, but you find so many people that buy property abroad in countries that they've never been to, but they want to buy there because they think they're going to make lots of money. Buy a holiday home that you're going to use. So if you love Spain, buy a house in Spain. If you love France or Portugal or Turkey or Greece, buy there. Don't buy where you think you're going to make a lot of money. Buy where you actually want to be. So if you fancy dipping your toe in the waters, we have an exhibition on this weekend at Earl's Court. So Friday, Saturday and Sunday. It's a Place in the Sun live exhibition. We've got 70 seminars, 170 exhibitors from 40 different countries. So you can come in, have a wander around, get lots of information and hopefully find your own place in the sun.